I have the privilege of opening up our new series on the Ten Commandments. The preaching team is using a book by a well-known evangelist, J. John. He unusually begins with commandment number 10, and he moves backwards over 10 weeks to number 1. And my first thought on that was to wonder if God has put them in a certain order, who are we to turn them upside down? But J. John makes his case for it, and he's always worth listening to. His reasoning is this: these laws were first given to a people who were closer to God and depended on Him far more intimately than most Christians do today. It was God who had formed them as His chosen nation. It was God who had handpicked their founding father, Abraham, who had guided Moses to lead them out of captivity in Egypt, and who had then rescued them from slaughter by turning a pathway through the Red Sea into dry land. Modern Christians don't look on God as these people did. If we come to the commandments at all, we are rather strangers to the idea of God demanding total and unconditional worship, which is what the first commandment does. And so J. John starts at the other end, and he works through our duties to people and to our relationships and to our daily conduct. And he then finishes with the first commandment by showing how we treat God will govern everything else. And so today we are beginning with commandment number 10. And you've heard it already, and here it is again. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male or female servant, his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. In short, you shall not covet, full stop. To covet here is the wish to possess something that is not yours to have, something that belongs to someone else and to which you have no right. In Moses' day, this would have included the temptation to take someone else's living space, or to take someone else's spouse, or their wealth in the form of their servants, or their means of livelihood, that was their ox, or their means of transport, the donkey, or anything else they had. Times change, temptations don't. And it is still so easy to think in terms of, oh, I fancy that man's wife, or her husband, or their house, or that new car of theirs, or his job and the money that must come with it. I wish I had her figure. I wish I had his golf swing, and so on. But let's be clear, the Bible is not against good desires, or a decent standard of living, or using the talents that God has given you. So when then does desire become coveting? And the answer, when the wish becomes a wrong wish with the wrong reason and the wrong motive. And let me try this morning to spell that out under 3 headings. And these 3 are what makes coveting so wrong that God keeps giving this command to every new generation. So point number 1, coveting is wrong because coveting is idolatry, idol worship. Now, we tend to see idols as things, usually man-made things, things to bow down to and worship. And indeed, in the Old Testament, for century after century, that was God's complaint against his chosen people, until in the end he punished them by letting their enemies overwhelm them and carry them off into a long captivity. And at the root of that sad, sad story, their sin was that by coveting and worshipping false gods, they were dethroning their one true God. God is being pushed away and man-made things take over. So do you see why we have to learn this same lesson? Because, as we all know, we can turn our backs on God, even though we know and even though we are taught that it's in him and in him alone we find real joy and pleasure. Possessions pretend to give lasting satisfaction. And the danger, the sly, insidious danger, is that they do nothing of the sort. And they can come between us and God. And Satan is still as crafty today as he was in the Garden of Eden. One example, one that I fell for myself yet again this past week, and that is the modern thrill of online shopping. For me, the seduction is the seduction of books. That sense of power to be able to click once and know for certain that that package is going to be on your doorstep in 2 days' time. So very easy. And for you yourself, I wonder what the online attraction is. New gadgets, new clothes, whatever. Now, I know that what arrives in that package may turn out to make us more productive and more appealing, and in a good way. But the good we feel isn't always that kind of right and noble kind. And that Amazon package, however convenient it does not give life. And it can keep us from those deeper pleasures we were meant for. So on to point number 2. Coveting is wrong because coveting leads so easily to other sins. We all know the story of David and Bathsheba. One day, from the roof of his palace, King David sees this gorgeous girl stripped to the waist. And as he watches her, first the sense of covet, and then the sense of lust takes over. And she is brought to his quarters, even though he knows her to be the wife of one of his soldiers fighting for him, King David, away at the war. And what he then does not only results in adultery, Bathsheba becomes pregnant, and eventually it leads to David ordering the death of her husband after failing to cover up his own sordid actions. And David, I remind you, is God's anointed king. A few months later, the baby arrives, the innocent party, and does not survive. His mother, Bathsheba, now what we would call an abuse victim. She's grieving both a dead child and a dead husband, and she has to marry her abuser. David himself has to live with what he has done. And if we read on, we find that it's from this time that his family begins to fall apart. And it all begins from that moment of coveting what was not his. And then, just by way of mention today, there is too, of course, the greatest crime of all time. Judas was the greedy one of the 12 disciples, and Judas covets yet more money. He loves money more than he loves Jesus. And he sells his Lord and Master for just 30 pieces of silver. And that is how low coveting can sink you. How can people behave like that, we say? Because we reckon that that sort of thing would never happen with us. Well, perhaps not exact replicas of those events, but Jesus knows my weaknesses, my many weaknesses, and he knows yours. And he puts us on alert. It's your thought life that defiles you, he says. From within, out of a person's heart, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, wickedness, deceit, eagerness for lustful pleasure. There we have today's porn. Envy, slander, pride, foolishness. What a list that is. And here is what defiles us and makes us unacceptable to God. And a good many of the items we'll be looking at in the coming weeks are on that list. And as we give in to it, no one knows where that thought process is going to lead us or where it will end. Today's thoughts become tomorrow's habits. And so to the third and the last point. We've seen how coveting leads to idolatry and to other sins. And now thirdly, coveting cheats us of contentment. We are seeing this morning how coveting fails to satisfy. Even when you give in to it, you are never quite satisfied. What begins as a longing in the heart, that changes to a need, and then to a sense of entitlement. I need it, I deserve it. Nothing is going to stop me from getting it, especially when it belongs to someone else. I often play golf with someone who's a top defamation lawyer in London, and his clientele reads like a who's who in the world of sport and entertainment. I think he likes playing with me because he knows he can beat me. And when I knew that I had to speak on this subject of coveting, I asked him one day, how many of your clients are contented people? And there was a long silence. And 2 or 3 holes later, he said, that question of yours, I've been thinking. Not a single one of them is a contented person. I may gain some money for them. I may save them some money. But if you were to ask them, they would always like a little more. And there you have the banner headline for coveting. Always a little more, please. If only I had that other fellow's job and the status that goes with it, or his lovely wife, and the holidays they go on. Not to mention the non-stop battering that we get from the advertising world. All of it, of course, with a guarantee of lasting satisfaction, which never quite materializes. It's rather like trying to walk to the rainbow's end. You can't actually do it. And the nearer you think you are to it, the further away it's gone. One of those really searching verses that you come across in the Bible is only a few words long. Here it is. Where your treasure is, there in that very place, will your heart be also. And one day you and I are going to be examined on how well we have made good use of what God has given us in this world. And the older I get, the more I'm aware of the risk of losing out on eternal rewards by the way I've given in to earthly desires. And I can tell you, I know what I'm talking about. I once came up against this a long time ago now, but it was doing so much damage to myself that God himself had to come to my rescue. One or two of you may know this story. Most of you won't. And I have to take you back exactly 50 years. My father was on the point of dying. After 12 years of Parkinson's, he was then just a sad shadow of the athletic man he had once been. He and my mother lived 200 miles away in West Wales. They were both strong, committed Christians. And she phoned me one day to say that the end was near and would I come. I spent 2 or 3 days with them, and then I had to come home. And as I left them that afternoon, we all 3 of us knew it would be the last time we would be together. And my father motioned, he could hardly talk, motioned me to come near to him. And he held my hand, and he just managed to whisper some words. I recognized came from the Old Testament, from the book of Job. You shall hear what he actually said. Pesadai evevi eto miao baithiav ando. Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him. And my dad died that same week. And it was November 1975. The point of the story is that I was then a long, long way from God. I had been slowly drifting away from him for a year or two. I was traveling the world with my work and working with some people whose main aim in life was to make money and then to make more money. And it was rubbing off on me. I knew full well what was happening, and I was making no effort to stop it. I don't think my father was aware of that, but I am utterly sure that God put those words into his mouth that day for my sake. It was God who spoke to me that afternoon. And just a few words from someone almost incapable of speaking. And they changed my life. And they brought home to me, and I can still remember with blinding clarity, they brought home what a delusion the temptation to want more can be, and what a far, far greater blessing and contentment it is to put yourself into the hand of God while you live, and to, as with my father, as you die. It wasn't long after that I decided to retire early and to look for some Christian work while I thought I had the time and the energy for it. And here I am, more than 40 years on. Let's wind up this sermon today by asking, how do I overcome this urge to covet? Let me come back to that golfing pal of mine. After I had quizzed him, he said to me, "But what do you mean by contentment? What makes you content in your life?" And a good question from a non-Christian. And I gave him Paul's verse, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." And he quite rightly says, "But what does that mean? I don't understand that." And I had to try to say that Paul was talking not about being self-sufficient or self-secure or any of those other self-words. Paul's contentment was to rely on God as a heavenly Father who knows all our needs, which is very different from all our wants, who knows all our needs, and then he supplies us with what he sees is best for us. And so we are contented not in what we are striving for, not in what we are coveting, but with what God will unfailingly provide by one means or another. our golfing chats continue. I think he enjoys them because they are for him different and they are unexpected. But more important, what about us this morning? Because you see, contentment is the antidote to coveting. But it doesn't come easily. And Paul had to say that he had to learn the secret. But then he adds that we can learn the secret too. Many of us try to find that key in getting things and doing things, but Paul shows that it's not in those things, but it's in being someone, and especially in receiving someone with a capital S, receiving someone into your life. And your Christian life, and certainly mine, should be grounded not in what we do, not in what we get for ourselves, but in what Jesus Christ has already done for us. Knowing you, Jesus, knowing you, there is no greater thing. In a moment or two, we'll be singing that song. And as we do, can we let the words speak to us this morning in maybe a new and, I hope, an inspiring way. Thank you.